Alright, another DraftScience video presentation. Like to say that we're going to have a rational conversation with some sort of rational counter argument, but no, that's not going to happen. Still, not going to happen. So the Pyrrho has made a video. So the last we heard from Pyrrho a couple of weeks ago was springs create different amounts of momentum. So you compress a spring the same amount and somehow it produces different amounts of energy depending on what you put in front of it, which is exactly kind of proven, okay, by every experiment that's ever done with a spring, pretty much. I mean, you really can't make a spring do that. You can't make it do anything different than it does the same thing every time. And there's a whole bunch of simple cart experiments that demonstrate this. And, even the Stephen Bro, who opposes what I'm saying, definitely proved it in his experiment with springs. Now, he called it some sort of conspiracy, but it's, springs work that way. So, it's just so provably wrong, and so that was his last statement. And I predicted that he'd never open his mouth again, because, he's going to lose, because he can't. When forced to answer a question, he can't answer it rationally. So I have also put to him numerous times a simple question. Do you think an 8-pound bowling ball has more energy than a 16-pound bowling ball thrown with the same amount of human energy? That's what your formula says. Now, do you think the formula is right? Answer the question, because it'll just prove, you're just silly. You're a silly fanatic. Because there's no way you're going to find a single piece of evidence indicating that's really the truth. So he won't show any experiments. He won't link to any experiments demonstrating any of this kinetic formula being valid. So again, I've requested the simple thing. Show me one video where momentum fails to get a right answer, or show me one video where kinetic energy gets the right answer decisively over momentum. It's proven. The energy's there. We collected it. Show me you collecting the extra or less energy that your formula claims to exist. The disagreement with momentum. Show where it's accurate. So nobody's shown any experiment. So that's where we're stuck. And so the rest of it is just insults. He keeps saying things about me that I find offensive, like I'm rejecting all mathematics because I reject his derivation of Newton's formula. So again, this isn't something Newton did. Newton didn't see this great power, this extra energy. So none of Newton's mechanics are based on it. Newton basically told you where everything will go in the universe. Okay, the universe at what size he knew of at the time. But he accurately predicted Halley's Comet showing up different things. If he uses a kinetic energy formula, he's not going to be getting the right answers. So he got all the right answers using momentum. And he never derivated his equation into any other kind of bizarre notion that somehow there's twice as much energy depending on how fast something's going. Never part of any Newton physics. And yet they're claiming Newton was arguing for this nonsense in some way, when clearly it was invented by Newton's worst adversary in life, and it was resurrected. Okay, it failed the first trial, and it was resurrected by a bunch of amateur scientists, not the real thing in any respect, and just perpetuated into the future as if it's a fact when it was nothing factual about it, and there was no good evidence supporting it. And the only evidence supporting it was this niche evidence, the aberrant experiments that can be explained if they're willing to listen to the explanations, but they aren't willing to listen. Well, anyway, so it's just a belligerent attachment to a fable, and he's clearly wrong. His argument that springs produce different amounts of energy is wrong. It's stupid. It's silly. And so now he's just resorting to, again, the point is that he just keeps saying, I'm against mathematics. I'm not against mathematics. He keeps saying, I'm against science. I'm anti-science. I'm not against science. I want to see the experiment. I'm just saying, show me. You're not showing me anything. So why should I believe your formula? What is so special about it? I went through the formula in a video, so let's understand. I already went through it. Pointed out why I don't see any necessity to do this dot product and then say the dot product is a real product. It's not indicating direction anymore. It's an actual value that you put right into the equation and multiply. So it's not performing some task of just showing you which direction something's moving. That's what a dot product's supposed to do. It's just show you the direction. No, it's an actual entity that you're going to now square the velocity because of its existence.
All right, this is a video to in Manham. Hello, Gary.
So no point in saying this hello Gary shit because you're just belligerent in this shit. So I responded to his shit. Every time he says something stupid, I just say, well, you lick dog's ass. So every time he lies about my position and what I'm arguing, I say, you lick dog ass. Now I could say you're an alcoholic. I'll go back to that one because it's true. And that you are a terrible failed parent. I mean, I could be more personal if that's what you want to do. And that is a hint. That's exactly what he wants to do. So I'm just saying, well, yes, okay, let's just keep doing that crap. Useless, pointless bullshit. And you initiated it, not me. You did.
A personal message to Gary, and I'll just summarize here.
There's no personal message, okay? He sent a message saying I have an anxiety disorder. Yeah, so what? That has nothing to do. I don't have anxiety in videos. I had the same personality before the disorder and then after. Same personality, same person. Nowhere has there any indication that has anything to do with how I argue. How I make arguments has nothing to do with it. And anybody who's seen the videos knows that I'm almost more relaxed and comfortable making videos than I am living my real life. So it can't possibly be an issue, you fucking alcoholic. I mean, you're the one, you have a PTSD. You said it in your video, so now I just blame all of your erraticacy on the fact that you're having some sort of post-stress disorder because you suck at being a human being. No, it's not a disorder from some actual thing that happened to him as a victim. No, it happened to him because he's a shitty perpetrator, did a shitty job, and he has to pay the tangential witnessing price. Oh, what? Oh, isn't that just terrible? You have to be the witness to a tragedy of your creation. So you want to get personal? I'll get personal, you fuckhead. This is just a troll video, for fuck's sake. You're not talking about physics, and you don't talk about physics. My videos all pointed questions to you, and you answered none of them. When I got you to answer one of them, you answered it preposterously.
What's going on? Basically, it's as if, Gary has said for years ago that he has sort of an anxiety.
So, what does this have to, can it possibly have anything to do with anything? Pyrrho has made numerous videos drunk. Numerous. Okay, lots of videos drunk. Okay, so he obviously has a problem. Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Disorder, and he needs to blow off steam is my interpretation.
Oh, yeah, that's your interpretation. And so I'm not supposed to be offended by your interpretations. Well, yeah, I told you I don't see much value in your interpretations. You're an idiot. You're a fucking idiot and a propagandist and a liar. You've proven it numerous times by showing complete shit evidence and saying it was good evidence when any idiot could see it's not good evidence. I mean, you're saying you couldn't see that the waves were all jiggly in the wave tank experiment. You couldn't see that. You didn't pay any attention. You thought they were plain straight waves you put in. No, it was kind of so obvious. It was an obvious piece of propaganda used for a purpose that wasn't intended. It was videotaped just as a, hey, this is what happens when you put noisy waves in. It wasn't videotaped for the purpose that you used it for, as evidence of, hey, there's single slit diffraction in water. Well, there isn't if you do the experiment right. So, I mean, your shenanigans are overt. You're pretending, no, they're all honest mistakes. No, there's nothing honest about these assertions you make, and your arrogance is just obnoxious. You're obnoxiously arrogant.
Of it. And, I could have a discussion colleague that could, have Tourette's.
All right, he has no discussion colleague, so let's understand. Hofstadter couldn't stand him. I can't stand him. I don't know who could stand him. So anybody who disagrees with Pyrrho, raise your hand and say that, oh, yes, I have a collegial relationship with Pyrrho. Now, if you don't agree with him, you're fucked, because he won't have an argument about the argument. He'll never stay on the subject, he'll never address any of your points, and he'll keep changing the subject. And that's all he ever does, and that's all he ever did on the fucking goddamn YouTube. And that's why nobody can stand you, Pyrrho. Nobody. Except the other alcoholics, frankly. Great Tex, and Bill Bob, or whatever his name is.
And I'm game. It might be hard to put up with, but
I mean, the other completely failed people, people with complete failure lives who are still going pro-life, pro-life, pro-life. Funny, hilarious almost.
Try to put up with it. The problem with Gary is that has dominated now every subject, and I don't...
Yeah, and it's all on you, and you're the coward. You're the one who never made any videos on the subject. I had to drag you into this, okay? You just make your authoritative claims that your science is pseudoscience, your evidence is garbage. You just make these vague statements about something being wrong, and you prove nothing, you demonstrate nothing, you provide no evidence. When you do provide something, it's not called evidence, it's called just complete crap and propaganda. Again, he has provided no link to an experiment demonstrating that kinetic energy is correct. Not one.
I think it was always this way, and I think Gary has the capability, and I've told him so.
Oh, shove that up your ass also. Fuck you. You told me nothing except nonsense. You've done nothing constructive ever in a conversation. You just hurl insults over and over again. I told you, if you're going to keep saying this shit, I'm going to fight back. And you don't like it. Well, too fucking bad. You asked for it, you're going to get it.
To not just go with his eighth mind, as he used to call it.
And I'm saying all of you have one, moron. That was the statement. It wasn't that I have an ape brain. Everybody has the ape in them. Everybody has the more advanced culture, civilized brain. Everybody has the ape brain. Everybody has the lizard brain. That's the analogy, jackass. All right, and you don't convert that into some other horse shit. So again, is somebody supposed to say, oh yeah, you've really dealt with the point I was making by using it this way, that I'm saying I'm an ape? No, I'm saying exactly the opposite. The exact opposite statement was being made by me by using that analogy, is that we are capable of talking to our ape and controlling the ape, putting it on a leash with our intelligence. So I was clearly saying an intelligent human has the capacity to control the ape and control these reflexes, like your reflex to defend your physics, and you'll compromise integrity to do it. Now you've made a conscious decision to compromise your integrity to defend a religion. That was a conscious decision. That was one that went through your highest mind, and your highest mind approved your tactic. And your tactics are obviously moronic, stubborn, stupid, caveman, Homer Simpson crap.
But to use his forebrain, and he doesn't have to say, I smell the dog butts and things like that.
Yeah, I do. So as soon as you say something that's a lie, that I'm against science or that I'm against mathematics, I'm going to respond with another lie right back at you, fuckhead.
At worst, you might argue that I insult Gary's ideas, and that's fine that he takes it.
No, it isn't really fine, because you insult them with crap. You insult them by attacking the integrity of the thoughts, the integrity of the evidence I provided, and the integrity of the arguments. That's what you've been attacking. And you have no right to attack them because they don't lack this thing you call integrity, or I would call integrity. Okay, they're really good arguments, and you've run from them like a little pussy.
Seriously, but he can insult my ideas back. We disagree. Can't go into the boxing ring and then be all like, what is he...
So you're the crybaby, frankly. I'm the one saying, go ahead, throw your tripe. I'll respond with, you're a dog anus licker, okay, and an alcoholic and a failed parent. I'll throw in all these little personal shots. You throw your personal shots, and then make a physics argument, though, somewhere in the fucking video for a change. Make a real physics argument where you show something like evidence.
Throwing punches at me. What an asshole. He smells dog butts and whatnot. So we're not going to have that because that's pointless. I am going to finish with one last...
So you're going to do your horse shit, nobody can horse shit back at you. Oh, fine. Yeah, that makes sense. So again, you're just such a duplicitous hypocrite.
Thanks. Now, the personal insults,
And a coward. And a fool.
they're not going to stop. So that's why this is going to be the last thing. If Gary could...
Right. So, and again, I can show you the emails. I can show you every bit of tripe that Pyrrho has typed. You've seen half of it, publicly. That the crap comments he's made. All right. They have no substance to them. They're just insulting my integrity as a thinking being, and he has no right to attack that because he has no evidence to attack it with.
talk where he only insulted my ideas, fine. But calling me...
Yeah, so again, just more bullshit, right? Where have you done that? Where have you just attacked my ideas? Oh, you didn't. You've always attacked me for having them. That somehow they are illegitimate, obviously and overtly, and you have some grand pile of evidence to prove that it's just so fucking UFO, it's so fucking flat earth. These are your comparisons, jackass. So where do you have any right to do that? You're just slandering. You're not proving anything. You're not showing you're not a liar.
A liar, pretending he knows that I believe what I say.
No, I think you're lying overtly. I mean, frankly, like I said, what am I supposed to believe when you presented that wave tank experiment, you didn't know that that was cheating? That tank experiment had a whole bunch of noise in it. And you're pretending you didn't see all that noise, and you saw the noise in and noise out. And you're going to pretend to me you didn't notice that? You thought it was a regular, nice, straight, flat waves that were going in? Bullshit, you did. I mean, that's just, you're telling me I'm supposed to believe something this is impossible to believe, that you didn't know that you were cheating the argument.
So on. I know he knows that. Now, some paranoid ape part anxious about the situation might go in a paranoid fit, be like...
So these kind of descriptions are supposed to get you, you're showing you're taking some high road. And you use the word paranoid? Right, you're a dog-ass licker. It's not just that you smell dogs' butts. No, you go right in there, deep.
What if he does think my physics is true, but he just won't admit it? But that's not happening, Gary. I don't secretly think that you're correct. I'm telling you.
You secretly are afraid of the argument. That's a fact. And you demonstrate by the fact that you provide zero evidence. Again, the evidence he's provided in defense of all this two-slit crap and all the rest of it, wave tank. A corrupt, silly demonstration of how you can break the experiment. It's actually showing how you can break an experiment. That's all it's showing. It's showing how to do an experiment wrong. Break the controls, break the fair comparison. It breaks all the rules of good science. And that's the only piece of evidence this lying sack of shit has ever provided. Now, you're going to tell me that you sincerely are defending your good science by claiming you don't have any evidence? Because that's essentially all I can believe. You can believe that you don't have to produce any evidence to prove any of this stuff. You can just make the claims and you don't have to have an experiment that shows it. Well, then you're lying to me again to say that you think that's the scientific method. The scientific method is to declare it and not to demonstrate it. Don't repeat the experiment. Don't even do the experiment. That's even better. And that was the Feynman approach. Don't do the experiment. Just talk about the experiment like you did do it. And that's exactly what Feynman did. Will you ever admit that that's exactly what Feynman did? He talked about experiments that have never been done. Yes, that is exactly what he did. He'll never admit any of this, so what can that be called other than deceptive and lying? When you don't admit that your physics lacks integrity, that the physicists describing it have lacked integrity, that's lying. Okay, when you make them into perfect statements of absolute truth, when they're not perfect statements of absolute truth, because there's no fucking evidence.
The truth. Now, what I'm going to tell you about what I believe. Now, what I'm going to tell you about energy needs to be taken this way.
All right, so this is what he believes, and now he's going to pretend what he believes is regular physics. So I've played the physicist doing the videos, right? I mean, I played the physics girl video, I played another guy's video, and I played another guy's video and another guy's. There was at least 4 of them, right, that I played. Showing it, making exactly the same argument. It somehow magically it loses half its energy, right? I've shown playing the videos of the physicist saying it, and yet he just keeps asserting that, well, that's not my physics. No, you're asserting exactly the same thing. They were doing these stupid, lousy, rotten, silly arguments they were making in defense of mv squared. How is your argument any less silly than theirs? It doesn't fit the evidence. It isn't what the experiment shows. And you're just another liar sitting here telling me that's what the evidence shows when clearly it doesn't.
It's important. You need to understand that I know you're going to disagree with the energy formula I'm going to use. You're going to disagree that formula even matter or whatever.
So he said it again. This dog ass licker said it again. Because I don't think this formula is any good, he's implying I don't think any formulas are any good. Which is a complete and overt and disgusting lie. This has nothing to do with me rejecting science. This has nothing to do with the scientific process. I love evidence. I love good arguments. I love all that shit. That's the stuff I put on a pinnacle. What I hate is dogma stated without any evidence, and I'm supposed to believe it. Believe in the gremlins because I told you, and I have a master's degree. I mean, isn't Sean Carroll basically saying, look, I have a master's degree and I can talk very nicely, so shouldn't you believe there's multiple universes? I have not one stitch of evidence to defend this as a truth, besides the fact that it's conceivable. Okay, just like Horton Hears a Who is conceivable. I can imagine it. Does that mean there's a single shred of evidence there's a hoobie somewhere? No, there's of course no evidence of hoobies. There's no evidence of Bugs Bunnies or Donald Ducks or Daffy or any of that crap. Or the three little fucking pigs. None of it. There's no evidence for any of it. Yes, I can imagine all of it. But there's no evidence that any of it's real.
I disagree with. But I'm just telling you what my side claims. I don't care about...
Okay, it says my side now. So what side is this? So he says, this is what my side claims, and it doesn't have anything to do with all the physicists who say it. So it doesn't have, it's his side, but he doesn't take any responsibility for how bad the arguments are for his side. I mean, amazing duplicity.
Physics girl or what you think any of those people...
Oh, so what I think they said. So even though I play their overt statements, Physics Girl says, I 100% transferred the momentum. So the momentum of an object was 100% transferred to another object, and yet I lost half the energy to heat. How can you heat something with half the energy and at the same time transfer all of the energy? It's not frickin' possible. It's impossible. No one can ever defend it, and yet I've got at least 3 physicists saying it.
Said, right? This, I'm going to show you through the formula, what the formula are saying.
Oh, blah, 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 blah. So again, he keeps ignoring the history, right? So how many times have you seen me in these videos, people? So just be honest. How many fucking times have I said, let's go to the real history of the formula? Okay, invented by Leibniz. It didn't even have the half in front of it. So it was mv squared. It was preposterously inaccurate. Okay, now it's just silly. You know, because they put a half in front of it. Now it's only silly. But it was preposterously wrong when it was invented. And that was for 100 years. It stayed in that broken state. And physicists didn't notice how wrong it was. Even though it was 100% wrong in its answer by their current standards. I mean, it's 100% wrong in its answer by Newton's standards, but it's an extra 100% wrong for 100 years. It was 100% more wrong. That's its real history. He ignores the real history and keeps pretending that this formula was a clean derivative of Newton, when it was a contrived derivative of Newton, and that's all it was. It was always just contrived mathematics. It was never natural. A natural process to see somehow in F equals ma that somehow F equals ma is saying velocity squared. Bullshit, it's saying that. Bullshit, this has anything to do with anything logical or fair or rational, or this has anything to do with good science. This is exactly what bad science looks like. This is what flat earthers resort to, is perverse derivations. This is what people who want to prove infractals exist or some other kind of horseshit. This is their tactic, jackass. You've been outed. I've done it over and over again. This is just a lie to imply that the history of this formula has any integrity whatsoever. It has 0 experimental evidence, and it has, and therefore it has no scientific integrity. Without evidence, you have no integrity, and you're just demonstrating that. You have zero physical evidence that this formula is correct. Zero.
And therefore, I don't need to go to Physics Girl or any videos on YouTube. This is what we claim. And
oh, so he says we. Who the fuck is we? You and Barklord? Who the fuck is we? Greytex? Or Galetex? Or whatever the fuck his name is?
it's verifiable or deniable. You could expose it as false because it makes predictions that you could test. Just
yes, you could test them. That's the whole fucking point, is let's look at the real test, okay? Instead of the fake thought experiment, I 100% transferred the energy into the other train, and I also heated the, I heated New York City. Yes, I 100% transferred all of the energy, the momentum, to the other train, and yet I also heated, whatever. Your bathwater. No, you didn't do that. That didn't happen. There's no evidence of it. There's no experiment where that physically happens. Just as there's no fucking 8-pound bowling ball knocking down twice as many pins. It doesn't happen in the real world. It's not a real fact. It doesn't happen. Your formula predicts the wrong outcome. Period. Like a broken clock, it's right twice a day, and that's it.
With a spring and a cart. Or spring.
Oh, so the experiment I've played, 15 times now? He's saying that experiment demonstrates he's right, when of course it demonstrates exactly the opposite. So I'll play it. I'll play it again in my next video. Let's just say maybe. Do I really have to play it again? Do I really have to show you overt evidence that the spring always produces the same energy this way as it produces this way? It's 100 joules, and that's all it can ever give anything, is that 100 joules. And so if it's a light cart, it goes twice as fast as the cart that's twice as massive. The momentum works fine. Everything works fine. It's just completely Newtonian, and it works 100%. And your formula is making statements that have no evidence backing them. It's saying the light cart can produce twice as much joules of energy. It can't. I can never extract the extra energy. It doesn't fucking exist in reality. It's just an overt, silly proposition by you, and you have zero evidence. Zero, 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 zero real world, real evidence to demonstrate this is how the reality works. None. Zero evidence of you ever collecting this extra energy or ever showing the heat that's lost. You do neither one ever. And you never will, because the formula is a piece of shit.
Balls. All right. Now, basically, you have a spring, right?
So he just implied again that he has evidence, and he has zero evidence. Let's understand, I've played the fucking videos. He has played none. He has shown none. Because none will verify what he's saying.
Let's say it goes all the way out here when it's loose. And you have a spring that's here when it...
So, we've been over this 4,000 times, right? But there's no way he can make this into more energy. There's no way the same compression can create two different momentums. It doesn't happen.
It's held back. Hold it back. A little switch. And go that way. Right?
Durr.
Oops.
This has only been in my videos like so many times. Dozens of times I've drawn the springs, right? So we don't need to do any detailed drawing of the springs, because we've already done that. And we've already shown them in the Professor Lewin video. We've already shown them in even Stephen Bro's video. So we already know the concept. But that's how little detail he pays any attention to. He really doesn't watch any of this content. He just reacts to it. So he watches 1/10 of it, or 1/5 of it, or 1% of it. And then says, oh, he's saying something that I don't agree with, therefore I will rag on it. But I won't, like I said, he won't ever prove it or show it or demonstrate it.
Now, this distance here, we'll call this a distance x. Because the energy that gets stored, no wait, we won't call that energy k, of course, we'll call that energy in the spring, is equal to 1/2 k x squared.
Right, says you. Okay, says you. No, it's just a value. You press it this far, it's 100 joules. You press it farther, it's 250 joules, and then it's like 500 if you go another inch. So we know it gets progressively tighter. That's what the K is. So that's the constant. But the 1/2 v squared has absolutely nothing to do with any real measurement of anything real called real energy. So he's not even showing us the actual derivative. This is not Newton's mechanics for sure. Okay, E equals 1/2 V squared. Let's just say the K is a constant, so we'll ignore it. 1/2 V squared. Where's Newton say anything like that? All right, nowhere.
Now, like I'm saying, this is what current science claims.
Okay, that's your claim, and it's an unproven claim and undemonstrated by any evidence. So what I'm saying is you have zero evidence demonstrating that that's what a spring does when you compress it, that it does this V squared thing. There's no V in the equation. It will not produce any of that. That has nothing to do with it. You don't even have mass in here. We know that the mass is substantially important in terms of what the velocity is going to be. So it's got to be a horseshit equation. You don't even have the mass of the object you're putting on the spring in your fucking energy equation. How could it make any sense? Oh, that's right. It can't make any sense.
If you compress the spring, now K is a spring constant for that spring.
I didn't watch this part for you. I ended right on his silly statement that he somehow has the evidence in the spring experiments. And that's where I just ended because it's like, fuck this is too stupid. So I thought he would be doing his derivative of the mv squared thing out of Newton's acceleration formula, his force formula. I didn't think he was going to resort to this silly premise, this unproven piece of rubbish as a formula.
All right. So that can be 1 or 10 or whatever. It's basically how many joules per whatever the unit of X is, right? That's the amount of energy, and it's going to come out.
And again, how could it make any sense? The spring doesn't have any velocity squared. What the fuck is V squared? What are you talking about? It's a distance of fucking compression. It doesn't have anything to do with velocity. So how could this formula mean anything at all?
Joules, because joules is the amount of energy. How strong of a slap? Regular slap, twice as strong as
doesn't make any difference. Okay, the number for momentum is a number. It's a consistent number. Half the momentum is 50. Full momentum. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. We're talking about the relative comparisons. Your idiotic formula says an 8-pound bowling ball knocks down twice as many pins. No physical evidence demonstrates that to be true.
Regular slap 1 billion times. Now, what's totally separate, what current science says about an object that's traveling at velocity v of mass m is that its energy is called kinetic energy. Because
again, we know that's all arbitrary when this took place. This has nothing to do with reality. Momentum was the definition of something's energy in Newton's day, okay, and it still was when they decided to call this kinetic energy, okay, but it doesn't mean anything. We know kinetic was only used to make a distinction between potential and actual. So the word kinetic just came out of that's the actual energy that something possesses versus the energy of the field it's in. So the potential versus kinetic was just the only reason why kinetic was used. So this is more horse shit, more distraction, more evasion of the subject.
Kinetic means moving, and that is 1/2 mv squared. So that means if you buy a spring, and it has a spring constant, and you hold it back a certain distance and you push a mass, you can see how much energy it's putting into the situation. And no matter how big the object, whether it's a big mass or a little mass, it puts the same amount of energy.
Okay, so that's the big lie, right? Okay, but he's just using the word energy with his formula. So he's denying the existence of momentum as a definition of energy. So again, he's pretending that there's no duality between these two formulas, that they don't give you completely different answers, that you cannot possibly navigate space using both of these equations. It's impossible because they give you impossibly different numbers. You will not be able to react and turn and do whatever you have to do. You will do it wrong, okay? They'll both give you different answers. So it's just silly for him to say, well, when I use the word energy, I mean kinetic energy, formula energy. I don't mean real energy. No, the spring produces the same amount of energy. Yes, we both agree, but it's not kinetic energy. It's just energy. And what we're trying to find out is whether there's anything possible that can be variant. That putting a heavy mass on means I realize more of the energy than if I put a light mass on. And the fact is, no, it's not going to change how much of the energy I can convert into mechanical moving energy. That's the fact. The experimental evidence is the energy doesn't change. No matter what object I put in front of that spring, I'm going to get exactly the same energy back.
Current science says. So
current science doesn't say anything he's saying. What he's saying is that I could have, if I shot two things with gravity with the same spring, so I use the same exact spring compression, obviously the lighter thing is going to go much higher. But when it lands, it'll have exactly the same momentum, so it'll compress the spring exactly the same amount again. And the heavier object will do the same thing. It won't go as high into the gravity, but when it comes down, it'll compress the spring exactly the same. And the fact is their velocities will be exactly proportional to that. The one will have twice the velocity. It won't have the velocity squared. There won't be any magical amount of energy. There'll be exactly twice as much energy, velocity, with the half as massive object, period. That's what the experimental evidence demonstrates, and he's just a liar when he pretends it does something different than that, because that's exactly what it does. The kinetic energy formula will fail to give you the right answer. It will assume the smaller object has more energy. It clearly doesn't, because when it lands on the spring, it produces exactly the same result. They weigh the same. You can't say it has more when it weighs exactly the same.
Science says that the energy in the
So science doesn't say this, so that's just more lying. Okay.
spring is all going to go into the energy in the ball once the spring releases its energy.
So there's no point in saying it all goes into it, because it doesn't by your own formula. It's clearly your formula says there's more energy in the lighter object. Somehow the lighter object has, in fact, more energy. That's what your formula says. So he just implied that it's the same energy when clearly it's not.
The spring has a certain amount of energy, this amount, and when it releases it, it's going to turn into a certain amount of energy in a kinetic form. That's what current science says.
All right, so let's just understand that's not what current science says. It clearly says the faster object has more energy. It clearly says it. So when I shoot the two things up, it's saying the smaller object somehow got more energy from the spring. Even though when they land, they're going to land and compress the spring exactly the same amount again, they're saying while it's in the air, it has more energy. And the slower object, the heavier object, has 50% less energy. That somehow half the energy is now gone when it's in the air, but somehow when it lands back on the spring, it'll get it back somehow. Somehow. Who knows how? Magic or something? That's what it overtly says. So let's understand. That's why this formula is so obviously wrong. It's not a little bit wrong. It's like obviously wrong. Again, I'll draw this for you. It's this obvious. This is the 8-pound ball, 16-pound bowling ball experiment, right? So I have exactly the same spring. I compress it exactly the same amount, all right? And then I have a 2-mass object here, and I have a 1-mass object on this one, all right? So we're saying, oh yeah, the same energy goes into them. He just said it. Same energy is going to be put into both objects. Well, by their form, so momentum says that. Momentum says when they're up here, okay, this one's going to go this high, and this one's going to go this high, okay? Now, the momentum argument says they have the same momentum when they left, okay? So right when they left, their initial velocities times their mass, okay, equals exactly the same, all right? So the MVs, this MV equals this MV. There's no way to get around it. So this one will be going twice as fast as this one when they leave. Their formula says, okay, this lighter object, okay, so if this number was 100, their formula says the lighter object over here, okay, is going to have 100 joules in the air when it leaves right here. And this object, because it's going so much slower, only has 50 joules of energy. So this object, while it's flying, has 50 joules. This object has 100 joules of energy. If I was to crash them into another car or something, this one would do so much more damage than this one. That's their theory. If it was a bowling ball, this one does so much more hitting down of pins because it has twice, 2x the energy. Okay, so momentum says they're equal. Their theory says they're completely unequal. Then the joke is, I mean, it's a joke because it's so fucking stupid. The fact is when they fall down, they reach their maximum velocity again. So the maximum point is going to be right here. So that's where we want to do our measurements. It's right where they land and right where they, before they impact the spring, right? As soon as they leave the spring and as soon as they hit the spring is the point we want to measure. And so when they land, somehow that energy, the extra energy, we're not going to be able to realize it. We're just going to get the same compression as this one. And certainly the lost energy somehow must be recovered because somehow it's going to get the free energy back. It's going to compress the spring just as far. So it's the same 100 joules. So there's just absolutely no way to make this paradoxical pile of crap into something logical. This simple diagram proves the whole thing a big pile of crap. There's no way this formula is predicting the actual facts. There's no extra energy. This does not have twice as much energy here as here. There's exactly the same amount of energy at both these points. When both of these things hit, they're hitting with exactly the same number of joules. Their formula overtly says this one has twice as much energy. It's overtly wrong. It can't be defended logically. It's just an absolute pile of steaming shit. And I cannot believe that I'm supposed to believe you're a sincere person and you don't understand this argument. You don't understand the 16-pound ball versus the 8-pound ball. You don't understand the logic of somebody saying to you, why would no professional bowler in history not take advantage of the extra energy? Why wouldn't he go to a 14-pounder? Why wouldn't he go to a 12-pound or a 10-pound? Okay, and take advantage of being able to knock over twice as many fucking pins. Why wouldn't that happen? Why wouldn't the wrecking ball company go to bullets to knock down buildings? Because bullets have 1,000,000 times more energy. Okay, it's not even like they're 2x. If they took the same amount of energy and shot bullets at the building, they're theoretically supposed to be knocking down, creating much more heat, much more energy. Hundreds of times. Not just twice as much anymore, right? With a bullet, you're talking about hundreds of times more energy. Why are they wasting their time with the big crane and the big ball when they should be shooting cannonballs to knock the building down? You've ignored these questions, you've ignored the paradox, you've ignored the fact that the evidence doesn't support your theory, and you just keep doing this gurgitation of mush. Overtly incorrect, provably wrong mush. And somebody shouldn't get offended?
So that means that I could set the energy of the kinetic equal to the energy in the spring, in the end. The steady state, once it's all in EK form.
It doesn't matter, because the point is your formula predicted one of them had more energy when it left the spring, and it can't. Because they both compress the spring the same amount when they land. The experiment doesn't verify your predictions.
So these are going to be equal. The ES of the before is going to equal the EK of after. Right? So that means that I know that 1/2 mv squared equals 1/2 kx squared.
So again, he's just making this up. So he's just saying the fake energy I made here, I'll just have fake energy on this side. So yeah, fake energy means fake energy, but then you're just separated the fact from the facts, which is the fact is we're really comparing two masses against one mass. We're comparing two different objects. This isn't the two objects. You aren't comparing two objects here with this formula, with two different masses. And again, what sense would it make for the spring constant to be established to be the mass of something? Only half of the momentum equation is the constant of the spring. You can see overtly that doesn't make any sense. So he started with a bullshit equation and then it tied the bullshit equation to another equation that's overtly wrong. The fact is that all there is mv. That's your energy when you started, and that's the energy of the spring. The spring is basically just going to be able to produce momentum. That's all the spring can produce is momentum. Change the mass, you'll change the velocity. But the spring will only produce a certain joules of energy based on the K, the constant of the compression.
And this means that I can solve for the velocity.
So just silly. There's no velocity in the spring, so we already know what does that have to do with anything. The velocity. There's no velocity in the spring.
So if I could buy a spring with a certain spring constant and I compress it a certain amount, I know that's like a battery. That's a certain amount of energy to within some accuracy, right? And I can, if I put a little ball in front of it.
So again, he keeps doing things. Like I said, this has already been done in the experiment thousands of times, or 100 times, or whatever. I've already done it. I mean, this isn't in dispute. So he's pretending there's some dispute, like somehow anybody watching this whole chain of reasoning and logic, this argument that somehow the key point that we're disagreeing about is what happens when you compress a spring. There's no disagreement there. There's a disagreement with what happens after the spring releases and the object is given the energy of the spring. Does the spring efficiently give its energy to the objects? Well, if it efficiently does that and has 100 joules of compression, then both the objects have to have 100 joules of energy, or let's say 99. So let's say the spring is 99% efficient in transferring its energy, storing energy and releasing. It's like a battery. You put the energy into the battery and there's a certain efficiency. You know, how much energy does the battery lose to the atmosphere? Now, a car battery loses 1% a day, but this little battery doesn't. So it's pretty efficient. I can pull the energy out and I can put the energy in fairly efficiently, where I'm only losing 1, 2, 3, 4% of the energy I'm creating, heat and all of this other stuff that I create. And it's a minor part of the price I pay to put energy into a battery and then take the energy out. So the battery's really efficient. So the fact is if it's 100 joules of compression, then both objects have to have the 100 joules. So we'll say 99 joules. They're both going to have 99 joules. Your formula says one has twice as much as the other. One has 50 and one has 99. That's what your formula says. That's what it predicts, and the prediction is overtly wrong.
Of mass, 10 grams and mass 100 grams, it'll push each of those weights, and I can use this to find out how fast they'll go because I've got a velocity in there and all the other numbers. I know the mass, I know the K, I know the X. So
you've got a velocity squared in there. So again, it's just a complete huge perversion. I've got a velocity in there, a velocity squared. So again, it's hugely lopsided towards velocity. So again, the claim is that you cannot change the energy of something by making light things go fast. Making light things go fast, there's absolutely no experimental evidence showing that the light thing going faster has more energy. That if I take a light piece of chalk and I put it, I take a light chalk and a heavy chalk and I throw them into gravity, the light chalk will go higher. But when it hits my hand, it's going to hit with the same amount of energy, the same momentum. It's going to have the same exact weight. The weight, okay, is key to what's going to happen with the velocity. And that's the truth, is the momentum is the same. If I hit them with the same force, they have the same momentum, they have the same energy. Your formula says otherwise, and you have no experimental evidence to defend it. That's what the history shows. That's what the 300-year-old history shows, is there's zero evidence really supporting this theory. There's no evidence. In fact, no good evidence supports this idiotic kinetic energy formula. It's not defendable by evidence.
We'll be able to solve for the velocity. So, and that's going to be v squared, let's say mv squared. If I multiply both sides by 2, then mv squared equals, the 2 cancels out, and that's kx squared. Or divide by a half. That means v squared equals, I'm sorry, I misdrew that.
So we don't know what kx is. So he wrote it at kv up here, now it's kx down here. So what the fuck is x? Yeah. It's just horseshit again.
Let's go back. V squared equals k over mx squared, which means v equals k over mx squared.
So again, instead of showing a simple experiment demonstrating where the same spring does give one object twice as much of the energy, he does this horse shit. And then calls me the bad guy.
And that equals k over m, square root of k, Jesus, m times x. And that's where this other graph comes in. That's the velocity.
So we'll see no evidence of this. Like I said, the fact that you can predict wrong velocities with the wrong formula going in, I mean, there's nothing surprising about that. I mean, your assumptions are in the spring; they're in all parts of this equation. So yeah, you can contrive correct answers, but you can't undo the duality of making the comparison between a two-mass object and a one-mass object. So show me how those two end up with the same momentum. Because you have to do that. You have to show how they both land on the spring with the same energy, even though you say they have different amounts of energy. Then how do they land with the same energy? If they have different energies, how do they land with the same energy? That's a simple question to answer. If when they're going up, they have different energies, how can they land on the springs with the same amount of energy?
Now, in this equation over here, I mean, in this graph, I've solved for V, and I've taken K to be 1. And I've taken X to be 1. So that it's in terms of energy and...
So this is like going to one of those silly things where you decide what the slit width is, for the double slit experiment. Complete synthetic and no comparison to actual reality. So they'll never show you the actual experiment done with those parameters. Okay, they just sit there and this is what our math says the outcome will be. Well, that doesn't mean anything. It means nothing at all.
Mass.
So we can't even see this chart, whatever it is, but we know that both objects have the same momentum, and so both objects have inverse speeds to mass ratios. So it's completely consistent with MV, and not at all consistent with your assertion that one object has twice as much energy. So again, where's the two objects in here? We don't even see. What the fuck is this chart? What use does it have?
Now, what I have in the graph here is two graphs. First of all, I have the velocity and the momentum. So here's the velocity. So what you see...
Velocity of what? Mass 1 or mass 2?
Here on this graph is... This is mass on this line here. And this is velocity. So the smaller the mass, and it's hit by a certain amount of energy, and it goes flying. How fast does it fly? Well, the smaller the mass, if the mass is... let's see, what would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if the mass is 0.2 right here at this little point.
Is this against gravity, or is this a mass rolling on an incline? What is this? This is just more horse shit. I put the energy in where? Going against gravity? What is this?
See my mouse? Then the velocity is somewhere up at 3.3. But if the mass is 4, then the velocity it's going to shoot off with is...
All right, well, we know this isn't true, okay? We know there's just a straight line that connects velocity to mass. I increase the mass a little bit, I decrease the velocity the same amount. So this line is a complete pile of shit. Nothing to do with reality. If you actually did the experiment and tested it, that is, you made your mass lighter, you did the spring, and you just keep making your mass lighter and lighter by little shreds, you'll make your velocity faster and faster by exactly the same proportion. It'll just be a dead straight line. So it's horseshit. There's no evidence supporting whatever this is. This graph is not telling you reality. It's not a graph of experimental results. It's a synthetic graph based on his fake, phony, and inaccurate formula. It has no evidence value. Zero evidence value.
Like 0.72 or whatever meters per second, because of the way I've used the units. If you did these units with different units, it could turn out to be different numbers, but the proportionality...
Yes, if you put in the right formula, MV, sorry, you'll get a nice straight line.
Between them would still follow this curve. Right, so the velocity is really fast if the mass is small, and it gets slower as the mass gets big. Now I also have graphed the momentum. So this is how fast the object will go. The spring pushes the object, and this curve shows for any given mass or any given velocity what you would expect. So if the mass is 3, then you could go up and look at this curve, and right where the mass is 3, then that's the velocity. 0.87 or 0.82 or whatever it is. You could read it off of that graph.
Just go. So he's not dealing with the subject at all, which is there are two different answers to the same question. You can't have the existence of momentum as a meaningful thing if you're saying it doesn't mean anything. If it isn't an explanation of energy, then what is it explaining? What is momentum if it isn't a definition of energy? It's nothing. So you have to choose. You either think Newton was right, momentum is the right answer to energy, or you think Leibniz is right, and somehow mv squared is the right way to think about energy. And again, it's not Leibniz can't be right, because you already know you had to put a half in front of it to make it rational. So then you have to go way up to the 1800s and say, Young was right, or, somebody else who overtly decided we have to fix the broken formula.
Now, with the momentum, it's a little different. So given the mass at that point, and given its velocity over here.
So we have no explanation for what experiment this is supposed to be duplicating, but I would argue this line should be dead straight. There's no reason for the line to have this curve in it. There's no curve. Friction will do that to an object. Friction will take away a velocity over distance, but this is supposed to be its initial velocity. There would be nothing changing the equal relationship between mass and velocity. This should be a dead straight line. So I don't know how he contrived this fake line, but it's just that. So he finds it offensive when I say some of his evidence is fake. This is fake. This has nothing to do with reality. This line is not momentum. Momentum is mv. The two of them are equally important. You change the mass, you change the velocity, exactly the same proportion. So this has to be a straight line, and the only way you can bend it is through some chicanery. This is shenanigans. For you to call this momentum is to lie to me.
What is the momentum? Because momentum is mass times velocity. And this is it. Given a particular...
That's not it. And again, he has given us no indication of what this is. Is this opposing gravity opposing it? Or what is this? This is not momentum. Momentum is only mv. Just understand, you can't possibly have a crooked line like this, a progressive line, a line that gets flat. You can't have it. It's not possible. Because whatever you take off of the mass, it's automatically put on the velocity. Take away the mass, the velocity. The same force, same joules. The joules have to go between these two things. It has to be a straight line. So he says he's not a criminal and a crook and a science liar, and yet he sits there and tells people this is what momentum looks like. It can't look like that. It's not possible for it to look like that. This is losing energy somehow. Somehow the big object doesn't move. That's a lie. It moves proportional to its momentum.
Mass, and you shoot it with a given energy, it will get different velocities. It'll also get different momentums. And though the velocities...
All right, so he's saying it. So he has no experimental evidence. So he just said the same spring produces different momentums. He just said it, okay? This line is a lie. I'm calling it a lie. It's an overt lie to call that the momentum path. MV does not create that fucking line. You've cheated it to make momentum look that way. There's no way momentum does that. It's not a fact. It's not based on any experiments. It's not based on any information. You have not provided any information about what calculation you've done to MV, but you've clearly perverted MV to create that line. And I'm supposed to think it's an honest mistake? No, it's more of your lying, deceptive propaganda. You're a propagandist for a religion, and you're showing it right here. Because this is an act of a desperate kook. Okay, this is the act of a desperate fanatic kook. You're sitting in your basement gluing footprints on top of fossils. I mean, you're faking it. This is a fake piece of crap. You didn't chart momentum. It's a lie to say you did.
Go down because of the greater mass. In general, when you put an energy in from spring into that mass and get it rolling or spinning or rather sliding, whatever, flying through empty space.
He is forcing momentum to match his formula. That's all he did here. He cheated it. He forced momentum to fit his formula. So he's basically saying that when you have a heavier and heavier object, you've lost energy. And he's forcing it to happen. It's not what momentum says. It's not what the momentum formula says. It's not what Newton would say. Newton would draw a nice straight line right across there. A nice diagonal straight line. That's what Newton would have drawn. All right? And he's just lying about the physics here. This is a canard. This is a fake. This is a phony. This is a sideshow. This is sideshow physics. He's glued feet on people's heads. This is bullshit.
In a vacuum, the bigger the mass, the bigger the momentum. The bigger the mass, the...
Complete nonsense, right? We know that the mass and the velocity are equally important. Period.
Bigger the momentum.
Yeah, the bigger the velocity, the bigger the momentum. Yes, if the mass stays the same and you increase the velocity, more momentum. Likewise, if you decrease the mass and use the same force, they'll increase the velocity. That means more momentum. Yes. You make the M bigger, more momentum. You make the V bigger, more momentum. But if you change the MV relationship in terms of use the same force, you can manipulate the mass and the velocity with equal proportional manipulations and have exactly the same energy. Double the mass, have the velocity, same exact momentum, same energy.
If you fling a little teeny tiny thing...
Again, every bit of evidence, no one's going to show me the experiment where if I do a momentum calculation, I'm going to get a wrong answer. No one's going to show me that fucking experiment. And then no one's going to show me the experiment where this fucking kinetic energy is ever displayed to be real. They're not going to show me the train losing half its energy, that is creating tremendous amounts of heat. They're not going to show me, the person throwing the 16-pound bowling ball and somehow their fingers all broke and somehow they couldn't give it any energy. Somehow all the energy failed to get into the ball. They're not going to show how their arm got so hot that they couldn't throw the ball anymore.
That's a 0.001 kilogram off. It has almost no momentum. A very high velocity, but almost no momentum, and it'll pink off you. That's what...
Okay, so this is just a big fat lie. So it has nothing to do with reality. But this is not the curve for momentum. It isn't justifiable or defendable. It's just a piece of shit. Absolute liar's shit.
Did you know that the molecules of oxygen in the atmosphere are going like at the speed of sound, hundreds and hundreds of miles per hour? I think they have hardly no...
Well, I guess they would be making sound if they were going that fast, wouldn't they? Because they'd be sonic booming all the time. So, wrong again.
Momentum. Now, it is possible to send a bullet really fast and put a lot of momentum in a bullet, even though it has a tiny mass.
So there's no lot of momentum in a bullet. Remember, the bullet only has the momentum of the bowling ball going 2 miles an hour. So I'm handing you a bowling ball. That's the energy of a bullet. It doesn't have any more energy than that. If it had more energy than that, again, they'd tear down buildings by just shooting guns at it because it'd be fun. Hey, shooting guns is fun. Let's knock down the building by shooting guns. You know that's not going to work.
But there is no free energy. What the current science says that you could disagree.
The current science says. So he says again what the current science says. I played Feynman. I played all these people, all these physicists. I played their videos. I've searched for these videos. Show me what science says. Give me the link to the goddamn fucking video that you says is what science says. Because I played the ones on the internet and they're all fucking full of shit. Including Veritasium and the rest of these horse shitters. So fuck you with this bullshit accusation that science says something different than what those videos say. Well then why don't you comment on their videos saying don't say that in the video? Even though it's exactly what science says and it's exactly been demonstrated by me to be fucking wrong.
Agree with Gary is that the bigger the mass, given a set amount of energy, and whether you're exploding the bullet and you're sending the casing and sending the bullet going, or a spring sending something sliding or rolling, what current science says is that the bigger the mass, for a set amount of energy, the bigger the mass, the more the momentum. The same amount of energy.
Okay, big lie. Okay, big fucking lie. So Lewin doesn't say that. Professor Lewin didn't say that anywhere in his video. So that's horse shit. I mean, he doesn't explain the dichotomy. So, obviously the physicists can't explain it, so they don't even talk about it. but he clearly didn't in any way imply that or state that overtly. But a physics girl did. Physics girl overtly said, I 100% transferred the momentum. The momentum went from one object to another object. All the joules went there, and yet I lost half the energy. She overtly said it. And she just claims that somehow the slower train that weighs twice as much somehow has less capacity to generate electricity, when it has exactly the same capacity as the faster train, the lighter, faster train. And that's the physical fact. And that's a physical assertion you haven't dealt with. You just ignored every single counter-argument I've made to this preposterous, paradoxical nonsense physics. You will not explain to me how the two-mass object has half the energy when it left the spring. You will not show me any experimental evidence indicating that the two-mass object has half the energy. You will not show me anything to demonstrate your theory to be correct. You'll just keep asserting that it's correct, and you'll use this propaganda. You'll use this fake line for momentum, this completely made up by you line. You can't defend it with any experimental evidence that the momentum line does this running out, the momentum tails off when you get heavier and heavier. You have zero evidence for that.
This little guy that's flying, this little guy that's 0.2 of a kilogram, that's flying away at 3.4 meters per second.
Which isn't very fast, frankly, but whatever.
It's going faster than something that's a whole kilogram. But its momentum is like less than half.
Says you. So again, just your assertion based on no physical evidence. And you call that good physics. You're being the person with integrity here. So your line for momentum, you say that has integrity. It's the same line Newton would draw. Newton would draw this line for momentum. That's your assertion. That it's solid, good, honest physics. No.
So there is no thing where putting a lighter object gets more energy, or the energy, it doesn't change. What changes?
So again, it's just silly. So he's saying momentum's now broken. So he can justify his energy equation by saying momentum's somehow broken, when the energy equation is obviously the problem. His energy equation is the one saying that one mass object has twice as much energy. There's no way around it. Its velocity will be twice the velocity of the heavier object. It will be. By absolute proven fact. This one will be twice as fast as this one. Professor Lewin's experiment that I showed you proves that. It will be twice as fast as this object. And the fact is their formula with that twice the velocity means it has to have twice as much energy, because this has more mass. The mass isn't squared. This has more velocity. The velocity is squared. Their formula says the two things have to have different amounts of energy. And now he's sitting there claiming it have different amounts of momentum and the same energy. Well, that's clearly not what they say. So that's clearly not what the physics girl video says. And I'll say it again. It is exactly what the other physicists say. So when he says we, who is he talking about? Show me the video of the other idiot who's saying, well, their momentum changed. Because it's not what any of the physicists say.
According to current science's argument.
Oh, so he's going to keep saying it as if it's current science. He's provided zero links. Zero links to any scientist saying what he's saying, which is the momentum changed.
You mean, is for a set amount of energy that you send a bullet or a ball or something in motion, it says that the momentum is what will be different.
Okay, so nobody says that. There's no physical, like I said, physics girl doesn't say that. All the other physicists I've played haven't said that. Lewin doesn't say, nobody says that. So show me a physicist saying that.
And it says that the bigger the mass, the more momentum you'll manage to get into that object. It'll just...
Okay, how silly does this sound to you? The more, I can now make free momentum. So all I have to do is I put lighter objects on, I get free energy. And if I put heavier objects on, I get free momentum. I mean, it's just so fucking stupid. And how can... it's just impossible. So yes, I predict Pyrrho will never make another video because obviously on anything like a physics subject, because he's fucking incapable of making one that can withstand any interrogation. I mean, this is so full of shit and so wrong and so inaccurate and so nonsensical. It's unsurvivable. You can't do this more than once.
Be moving a slower velocity. And if you look up a place where people care about this in guns, you'll see that...
Yes, if you do that, look up arrows is even more important, because all the arrow guys will tell you, no, I ain't using that lighter arrow. No penetration power. Doesn't work. So I'm supposed to get twice as much energy in my arrow because I made it go faster? It didn't work. So just more horse shit. Just more, let's go with the anecdotal, seems like argument. Again, when you throw the heavier, twice as heavy object and it only goes this high, and the lighter, the half as heavy object goes 4 times higher. Well, yeah, that looks like more energy. But yes, if you're smart, you know the feather is light and the hammer's heavy. And when they hit the ground, that's what's the important part. The energy had to move the mass. So they're going to hit the ground. That's when you're measuring the real force. That's when you're measuring what really went into them. Okay, and the fact is it's the same amount of energy. And when they fall down, they're going to hit with the same amount of momentum, the same amount of energy. They're going to make the same number of sparks. They're going to light the same number of matches. They're going to do the same, they're going to have the same potential to do damage. And it's just how they do it. So again, the bullet goes through a tiny little part of your flesh and makes a hole. Okay? And the bowling ball is big and your flesh can mold to it and, adjust to the energy. And that's the only difference. Right? It's just a physical difference between how you're absorbing the energy. But it isn't a physical fact of the energy. There isn't more energy in the fucking bullet. And you can just do the math. I did it just yesterday. You can just do it. You just say, okay, you go take 100 pounds, and then you make it 50 pounds, and then you make it 25 pounds, and then you make it 12 pounds, and then you make it 6 pounds, and you just keep going down, 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 and you find that it works out perfectly. That by the time you're going the speed of sound, okay, because you made the object so light, you're got to the bullet. You're at the bullet. So you can take the bowling ball and make it go right down to the bullet perfectly logically with momentum. It works perfectly. The two of them have the same amount of energy. I just, this is such a bad argument. You're just like, wow. This is how dumb humans really are. I mean, this is just so depressing. Because, yeah, what am I supposed to say? He's either insanely dishonest or he's really stupid. Wow. Those are lousy choices.
Everybody knows. In the gun.
Okay, so not everybody knows this, so that's more horseshit. If you go read their pages, you'll see they'll talk a lot about with a lighter gun, you end up with a faster recoil, less accuracy, so there's lots of issues, and they're not at all convinced about any of this kind of horseshit, so you're just so full of shit to think that they overtly know, oh yeah, lighter's always better. No, they know it isn't always better. Isn't more energy.
Community. That heavier bullets have more momentum, even though they travel at a lower velocity.
Okay, it's just so stupid. So they have more momentum, but they have they have less energy. So does that make sense to anybody? You can't change their momentum. I mean, it's just idiotic to say they have more momentum when the same charge moved them. So there's no logical way to change. I mean, we already know, all right? The momentum formula is telling you mv equals force. It also equals E. It equals energy. You're already done. You've already answered all the questions. It's all the same thing. Force is energy, is mv. And it works all the places you can look in the universe. That formula will always work. And it was proven by Newton using the exterior universe as an example. And it certainly has been proven over years of demonstrations here on Earth when you do them right. And the only thing that allowed this crap to become viable was clay experiments. Doing the experiment with a mechanism that didn't quite show you the energy accurately, that had a huge bias for velocity. So when you do an experiment where the bias is for the thing that has velocity, that is, it gets less friction the faster it's going, yes, you can cheat and make it look like it has more energy. But if you actually were scientists and you actually collect the energy, they'd find out, no, it's the same amount of heat. Same amount. If I convert it all into heat, they make the same amount of heat. Done, finished, complete. So that was just such a steaming pile of shit. Ugh. Well, maybe we'll save the comments for some other time, because that'll be fun. Well, some of the spring energy has to be lost to heat when you release it. So again, it's a tiny percentage. So we're talking about half the energy. We have to explain where half the energy went. Half. Okay, not 2%. Half. From internal friction, at least. So the ball's energy should be a bit less, methinks. Methinks you're pretty fucking stupid too. The heavier objects definitely have a disadvantage, okay? So there'll be a slightly more friction in the process of moving the heavier object. But again, it's a small, tiny amount of difference. Let's see. As an aside, I always dispute contentions that velocity can be measured. Oh, so right there we're done. I mean, shit. Oh, we can't measure velocity? Oh, this is the woo-averse. I mean, this was always an asshole, but now he's like a super asshole. I'll make an exception for old-fashioned, what is that? Some kind of nautical knots, but all other velocities are calculated from related measurements. I don't know. How does that even make any sense? Oh, there's great, well, gale force. There's gale force. Anyway, Gary of Amendum. I mean, that's just so stupid. He doesn't even know anything anyway. Still making videos? Oh, you know, he's just so indifferent now that he's a fun girl. Video singular, because no doubt he's regurgitating the same shite. Yes, and likewise, your shite probably hasn't improved any. It's probably incredibly uninteresting, you know. Well, you broke one of your fake fingernails or something. It's probably your videos are probably about where to buy good glue. Oh, Warble's on a lot. Another look at this tripe. Look at the way he typed this crap. Okay. So you're trying to explain to Gary's self-confessed ape brain anything which might cause his ape brain pain. So this is just more crap, right? You want to get on the subject, Warbles? Do you think momentum gets the wrong answer, Warbles? Do you really think the kinetic energy formula is right, Warbles? I mean, you're doing all this stuff with pushing water through hoses and shit. Do you really think this crap means anything? Good luck with that. My grandmother used to teach that. Oh, this is just so far off the subject. You can never convince a monkey. So just more, I mean, you know, wow, you people make such great arguments that have such great goddamn integrity. Oh, that's right. No, you don't. You just make crappy tripe. It canui be done. But you're a good bloke for having made an attempt at all. So again, you actually believe that momentum is a curved line. You think so, Warbles? I mean, he doesn't even pay attention to the subject, this stupid tort. I mean, he's just such a fucking Australian jackass. You know, he's eaten way too much kangaroo poo. A noble jester indeed, ranking with washing a leper's wounds with your own handkerchief. I mean, look at all of this fucking poetic horseshit about absolutely nothing, about the fact that you're such cowards. You'll assert to the world, but you'll do the exact opposite. You'll make your little fun of your politicians you don't like, and you'll do this and do that. And if anybody points that finger at your fucking hairy butt, all of a sudden you're all bent out of shape and all your little feelings are hurt. I mean, you're such fucking hypocrites. Such as lice. Have a good one. Stay safe. Oh. God, what tripe. Alright, let's see what Barklord says. This ought to be funny. Maybe it would help to clarify by explaining the flip side of momentum is inertia. So again, more horseshit. Inertia is just a made-up horseshit concept. Something doesn't move until you move it, okay? It's not resisting moving. It's saying, I can't move until you give me arms and legs to move with. You have to give me energy. I can't move until you give it to me. It doesn't have any inertia. It's not saying, please don't give me energy. It's saying, give me energy and I'll go. But until you give it to me, I can't go anywhere. I mean, it's like, wow, okay, you know, like the gas tanks have inertia. Like gas tanks somehow don't want the gas in them. No, they're saying, go ahead and pour it in. Oh, fuck, it's just so stupid. The larger the mass, the more energy is required to move it. Well, that's not exactly consistent with what they're saying. But yeah, move at what speed is the part that matters, shithead. The larger the ego, the more energy is required to move it. Ha ha ha. Oh, that was hilarious. To be serious. Oh, she does science reporting, so this ought to be really funny. Okay, but she's one of the wees. Okay, nice to see you, Barkload and Pyrrho again. Oh, it's just... However, just a friendly question. Would it be possible to have an interesting exchange which didn't revolve around a response to Gary's mistaken ideas concerning elementary science? So again, absolutely no evidence that I'm wrong about a damn thing. Let this slandering bitch think she has a right to say this tripe on a fucking video. I've proven that she's the clueless douche. She thinks there was such a thing as epigenetic evolution, and that somehow because a woman felt good and felt happy, she was going to give her baby happy genes. And if she was feeling sad and unhappy, then she was going to give her baby sad genes. When she can't change the genes, all she can do is break her eggs. So a woman who is deprived, that is, she's starved or she's harassed or she's beaten, maybe some of her eggs crack. Okay, and so all you can do is give you the broken eggs. Now, sometimes broken eggs have value, but most of the time a broken egg is going to make a broken human. And that's the evolutionary connection. So epigenetically, all you can do is inherit trauma. That's it. You don't inherit your mother went to college and became a scientist. No, you don't inherit any of that. All you inherit is your mother drank some lead paint and it fucked your eggs. But you're too stupid to understand that subject. And yet this fucking, what an outrageous that you would sit there and claim I've made some elementary mistake when she can't recite one of them. What mistake have I made, bitch? I mean, how dare you? I mean, it's just so fucking offensive. Let's see. When too much of the conversation consists of futile attempts to reason. So he reasoned with me by making this psychobabble preface, okay, that, oh, you seem to be offended by my insults. Yeah, that's right. I'm offended by your repeated insults. That's right. And I'm to the point to say, fuck you, asshole. If you're going to play the game, I'll play it back at you, you drunken fucking alcoholic loser. All right. With Gary's scientific misrepresentation. So again, she says it again. You're a liar. Period. You're a liar. Live with that, liar. Okay, you're just more of the shit talkers on the internet. She's this little prissy pants who's worried about everybody being friendly and nice, and here she is promoting the very kind of trollish behavior that creates the hostility on the internet. It is you liars who create the problem. Okay, not people like me saying, oh, wait a minute, some of the authorities are full of shit. It's not the people who are arguing with the authority that are the problem. It's the defenders who are slandering those who are arguing with authority. The pro-lifers. Okay, futile attempt to reason with Gary's scientific misrepresentation. So just an overt lie. Prove that. Prove that with one quote, one statement, one demonstration of where I've made some catastrophic error for which you think you are justified in saying I've misrepresented science ever. Ever. Liar. Okay, it creates for many of us boring memories of our basic university courses like Physics 101. Oh, she's a fucking physicist. Amazing. She can't do biology worth shit, which she's already demonstrated, and now she thinks she's a fucking physicist? Amazing. Why don't you link me to the video then that proves the kinetic energy formula? Show me. Okay, for non-science majors, there must be more interesting ideas to explore. Just saying, oh, so yes, don't deal with the facts and the real subject. Keep running away. God damn, you people are amazing hypocrites. So then, Gail Force chimes in. Hi, Kay, Cameron. I think when we were putting in our shifts on YouTube, it was the social media of the time. YouTube and social media has evolved. So again, who would even call this social media? Anything I'm doing on the internet, social media. Clearly nothing about my channels has anything to do with fucking social media. So they can't even figure out that lame accusation has nothing to do with reality. I'm not doing any social fucking media. Okay, I'm doing arguments in defense of the fucking truth that you slandering, lying sacks of ignorant shit keep trying to degrade. You're the ones who are failing to be intelligent humans. Instead have become placating, glib pieces of shit trying to just propagandize for your own personal advantages. Have they not? I'm not sure it even possible or fruitful to have a video discussion on YouTube, given that it is the modern medium designed for monologues. So again, and cat videos. So it's clearly designed and clearly functions, as I just demonstrated, as a responding medium. People can make a video, make assertions, and somebody can make the counter arguments. Now, I would agree that it's really unfortunate that you trolly, lying sacks of shit assholes have to get personal all the time, okay, and make derogatory statements about somebody's personal integrity or their personal honesty or their character. But that's exactly what you do. You provoke those counter arguments, and yet you don't have the balls, and certainly you don't have them anymore maybe, to sit there and defend your assertions. To be serious just made overt statements she put in bold text, okay, that I'm somehow denying science, denying elementary science even, when I'm defending Newton. Can she back that up with anything? No. Does she believe kinetic energy is right for any good reason? It's probably only because it was a woman's idea for a few years. A great woman was fighting for it. That's probably the only reason this formula has any sacred ground for her. But she probably doesn't know anything about the subject. She probably has no clue what momentum even is, doesn't even understand the concepts, and certainly doesn't understand the real history. And that her woman, defender of great science, hadn't yet figured out you have to put a half in front of it. It was still 100% off when she was defending it. 100% wrong answer. Shit. Alright, well anyway, life is just getting too ludicrous. There's just no capacity to find a few neurons that work on this planet anymore. There's obviously way too much lead in the water or whatever the fuck it is. But you're obviously all doing something I'm not doing, but somehow I seem to be immune to this irrational disease that inflicts all of you, where you can't do anything. You can't recognize anything honestly. You can't be fair to anything. You're such fucking duplicitous hypocrites. You can hurl insults, and yet I'm not allowed to return them to you. Say, return to sender. I'm not allowed to send back to you your own fucking pipe bombs. Yeah, I am. And I will continue to do so. And you will continue to lie and say, I didn't send that. Yeah, you did. Oh, fuck. Alright. Anyway. So, now it's enough of a video. So, till the next time and such. Man, they ought to just call this planet Duplicity. Because it's just duplicitous. It's just leaking duplicity. It's so bad. Alright, I forgot to say that this has been a DraftScience, always loving of science, video presentation. Real science, not the fake shit. Yeah, the real shit. The good stuff.